The Starside Prophecy by Tirri. Read by the author. Chapter 33. Listless. We had only been 10 seconds into the telephone interview when the matron, the title the owner preferred of Pembroke Rest Home, told me I had the job. I had not been confident about getting the job because I was still only 17, had no experience, and would be the only staff member on night duty. None of this concerned the lady who owned the establishment. "Welcome, Sarah," she said. "You are a little young, hen, but you'll do. I hope you'll be happy here with us. It's strange, but I feel like I almost know you. There was a girl in my dream the other night, a bonny wee lass who looked a lot like you. You can start tomorrow night. The number 16 bus passes Churchill Square and stops at the end of the road. Come in at 8 and you can go home at 8. Your meals are included, hen. Welcome." "Thank you," I said, thrilled that the deal was done and I was employed once again. Had I known what a nightmare I was walking into, I would have said something like, "Thank you, matron, but I have a couple of other job offers in Australia I would like to consider. I'll be in touch." The huge Victorian rest home had 9 bedrooms with water-worn linoleum and grimy throw rugs to cover up the burn marks. The house was cleaned monthly by a contractor whose overuse of bleach temporarily masked the smell of nicotine and urine. It was also a very dusty place, a mixture of ash and dead skin cells covering everything. Every time I went to work I had the same thought: Jesus Christ, I hope I don't end up in a dump like this. It was my job to care for the people humiliation had seized, society's casts-off and misfits, those forgotten by their families, the mentally impaired, ex-cons, and those needing antipsychotic sedation. Several of the residents existed in their own private world and made it clear they did not want me to intrude unnecessarily with small talk. This was fine by me. A middle-aged lady with Parkinson's disease remained reclusively in her room day in, day out, rocking back and forth. I thought the only reason she was alive at all was because her survival instinct forced existence upon her. Sharing a room with her was another lady who was offended by everything: the sunlight, footsteps, running water, the noise of the vacuum cleaner, and the smells found in places where people seldom bathe. Other residents liked to spend the bulk of their time reminiscing about the days before their dignity had been stripped from them. I frequently found myself justifying the lack of refinement by making mental comparisons about how much worse it could be. Well, at least they're not sleeping on a park bench. At least they're not in danger of being mauled by lions. At least there are not piles of shit floating on the floors. At least they're not dead. And then I stopped lying to myself. Surely death is preferable to living a sordid life of repetitious monotony with no hope of anything remotely dignified. I serve breakfast at 6:30 every morning, hard-boiled eggs, toast and powdered milk poured over some nameless cereal. Better than being hungry, I supposed, but not exactly eggs Florentine. I wondered what the owner ate for breakfast. Everything about the rest home was not restful. It was a paltry place of lack. The food lacked nutrients, the lighting lacked light, and the future lacked optimism. The matron was a savvy businesswoman with a no-nonsense exterior and no time for wasted emotions like compassion and empathy. She stayed away as much as she could, and the only time I knew I would see her was when she came to collect the government cheques that came through the letterbox every 2 weeks. It was not only the house of no rest she owned, in fact she had several others, and like the establishment I worked in, I knew the word basic would accurately describe the amenities in all of them. When the residents slept, I rarely did. I was always on edge. The schizophrenics might respond impulsively to negative inner commands, and so I remained sitting in an armchair in the TV room all night long facing the door, which I kept wide open. The lack of sleep eventually took its toll on my immune system, and I came down with what was diagnosed as glandular fever. I was in fact anemic, and the lack of oxygen in my blood now meant I had a hard time moving about. One evening I called in sick and never went back. I had no energy and found the minutest effort extremely demanding. I telephoned my dad. He had been drinking, and so he sent a taxi to pick me up. "Are you sure you don't need an ambulance, love?" the taxi driver said. My dad met me curbside, and I recognised the concern in his face when he saw how listless I was. His effort to maintain nonchalance as a way of suppressing his alarm was obvious. I flopped on the gold settee that would once again become my bed. It was neither comfortable nor uncomfortable, but it still smelled strange, like the previous owners perhaps. I slept 20 hours out of every 24 for several days and nights. My dad had called the doctor, who said if I deteriorated further he would hospitalise me. He put me on antibiotics and supplements as a precaution, and Shirley joked that I should be sent to a rest home to convalesce. This made me laugh. Shirley was genuinely concerned. I had not been expecting that. Even though I didn't have a fever, she bathed my head with a cold flannel and checked on me throughout the night. When my dad got home from work, it was his turn to look after me. He bought me bread pudding from the local bakery and plenty of it. What I needed was iron-rich foods like beef and spinach, but bread pudding it was, a sweet mushy substance made from bread not sold that day. Shirley made me drink tea with it to hydrate, and she put lots of sugar in it to boost my calorie intake because I had lost a lot of weight. "Drink this or you'll waste away," she would say. Even though her demeanour was gruff, I knew she was trying to nurture me. Shirley had given me an extra pillow so I could prop myself up during the day. The pillow had a brightly coloured hand-stitched picture sewn into it, a male peacock in full plume. I thought the bird looked exotic and beautiful. The silk threads of his feathers were as smooth as velvet, and I found myself endlessly running my fingers over them, wondering about the pillow's origins. Shirley told me it had been her mother's, that she had been into embroidery, and that I could keep it if I liked it so much. She never had, because she had been attacked by a peacock when she was 9. One afternoon, while I was lying on the couch, Shirley was in the kitchen making dinner. I was bored and walked over to my dad's bookshelves to the 30 or so books stacked between knickknacks. Novels mostly, Robert Ludlum and Frederick Forsyth, but my dad had recently admitted that he had gone off reading. Apparently Forsyth had introduced too many characters at once, and my dad kept forgetting who they were and what role they might play in a plot that he hadn't yet noticed unfolding. There was a book about the French Impressionist era that I had given him, and another one was an atlas, old and worn, which I opened. I took it back to the settee and sat down and turned the pages, looking at the world and wondering about it. Page 66 depicted an intricate map of Jerusalem and the surrounding hills, but it invoked within me a melancholy that took me by complete surprise. I just stared at the hills surrounding the place, as if nestled somewhere between them was a home I had once inhabited, a home where things beautiful and ominous and sad beyond words had taken place. I blinked hard, as if doing so might halt the strange barrage of images that had invaded my mind. I snapped the book shut and stuffed it under the peacock pillow so I could no longer see it. I then lit a cigarette and waited for my heart rate to return to normal. When my dad walked in, he was carrying a case of wine and was out of breath. The architect he worked with had given him the case of Chateauneuf-du-Pape to celebrate the fact that the telecom building was going up on schedule and on budget. "Bring out 3 glasses, Shirl," my dad said without bothering to say hello to Shirl first. Much of the wine I had tasted in my life so far had made me shudder, but this was smooth and rich, like black fruits and peaty forest floors, my dad said. I had never tasted anything so sophisticated or so exotic. It reminded me of something I couldn't put my finger on. My dad was happy to see me relaxed, even though I shouldn't have been drinking alcohol with antibiotics. "Cheers, honey, here's to your good health," he said, raising his glass. "Cheers, Dad."